feel like my dog. Yeah.
That's your
Welcome.
Garden of the Spirit, a class studying apples from the orchard. This class meets in Longmeadow, Massachusetts, and is held in memory of Malka Ruth Mas Moshe Margaret Vogel of blessed memory. Apples from the Orchard contains lectures and teachings of Kabbalah from the Arizal, Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, based on the weekly Torah portion, superbly translated and explained by Rabbi Moshe Wisniewski.
No, there's nothing in there. Hot water.
Oh, I didn't get a chance. I did bring cake. So we're at, yes, welcome. We're up to 923, I think.
Yeah, we are.
yeah.
I think it's Adam caused the blemish.
That's where I think we stopped. Yes, at the top.
Where Adam caused the
Adam
blemish.
caused the blemish.
The purpose of exile. We talked about the different exiles. Big discussion last week.
I know we did the one before.
Yeah. Okay. And Hashem went into exile and feels the pain.
Talked about every nation. One Jew is enough. Jews are in the 70 nations. All the nations were exiled
Throughout the world.
throughout the world.
Did you see the pictures this week? Just a second. Hold on. I sent it to you. The end of the world. Can you explain what that is, Gershon? Have you heard of it?
At the southernmost in the world, and that's Ushuaia.
Ushuaia.
Yes, right now it's cold.
There was snow on the
And
ground.
Tawil,
Winter there.
Winter.
that's the southernmost, blah, blah, blah. There you go. Oh, it's the link. Okay. My uncle used to take asthmatic children. They are overprotected.
Speak up a little.
All right, so boom, boom.
No, tell what it is.
It's the southernmost town in the whole entire world.
Why was it? What's it called?
So,
Why was it in the news?
what?
Oh,
The
the
southernmost town in the whole world.
Bacharim.
Yeah.
Good place for it.
That was cool.
Three mitzvah tanks are traveling throughout Argentina. How many communities? And including 140 cities,
about 20,000.
20,000 miles. Fin el Mundo
That's the world.
is the closest to Antarctica. And so they're visiting, and they have the Jewish communities in these places visiting Jews. Right?
Yeah,
So they're
one of the Tawil attacked
his father.
Rosario.
That's I sent him an email. And so one of them is my nephew. He's on one of the tanks, one of the mitzvah tanks. So naturally. Yes. So that is the end. That's so they're going to all these tiny places or
In
cities.
exile.
Huh? In exile. And
And
they're Jews all over.
One was that.
No. Don't listen to him.
Father of one.
But he's not in one of these cities. He lives in Rosario, and he was attacked a few months ago.
That was,
Know the family?
well, they sell shirts and pajamas.
I met the father when I was
Like
there.
in every corner of the city. Oh, they.
I knew him. I knew him from a bacher and then I met the father when I was in.
Family.
Okay. Okay. Anyways, that's why we go all over. Thank you. Yes, Alan, are you ready? Adam caused.
Adam caused a blemish in all the worlds through his sin, and therefore, when the souls he comprised fell into the realm of evil, they were spread through the world in all four directions, since the dirt from which he was made was gathered from all four directions, as is known. When Hashem created Adam, he gathered the earth he used to form him from all parts of the earth, so that wherever one of his descendants would die, the earth would accept the corpse and decompose it. Since Adam was formed out of dirt from all over the world, when he fell, all aspects of him fell, and his soul fragmented into pieces, subsouls, that scattered into all aspects of reality. All Jewish souls are derived from Adam's soul. Each of the 70 angelic princes of the 70 nations of the world, who collectively constitute the realm of evil in its entirety, absorbed its respective aspects of Adam's fragmented soul. Each of the 70
Archetypal.
archetypal nations listed in Bereshit 10, from which all the other nations of the world derive, is presided over in heaven by its prince, which is the spiritual essence of that nation, culture, civilization.
Our 70 angelic princes of the nations absorbed, they absorbed, they took aspects now of Adam's soul. Okay.
The souls present in each aspect of exile are not capable of extricating themselves. Only commandments performed by the Jewish people and the prayers they recite possess the power to separate them from the realm of evil and remove them from there, elevating them in the form of feminine waters, as is known. All this occurs through the Jewish people's prayers.
So again, what feminine waters refers to is when the connection, the relationship, is initiated from us, from from below, from here on earth. That refers to feminine waters, and is similar to a male-female relationship when it's the female who, I'm going to use the word, who comes on to the male. Okay, he has that good pickup line for the bar.
So the way it's set up, the God has made a way, so it has to be initiated from us.
No, it can be initiated either way. It can be just like in a male-female relationship, the advances. It could be the male who makes advances, it could be the female who makes advances. So here too, it could be either when Hashem initiates and is the first one to reach out to the people, or it could be the people who here below who request, who make advances, who have a good pickup line, who reach out to Hashem. And when this relationship begins from the people, it's compared. It's called feminine waters. When the relationship begins from Hashem, it's called masculine waters.
But I'm confused here because, like in the last video, we were talking about when we do the mitzvah, we combine like the page and all this stuff. So my question is that if we don't initiate a feminine water or we don't initiate anything, so it is sitting there and
If we don't initiate, if we don't perform or pray as Jews, if we don't do one of those things or both of them, actually we have to do both, then the evil that's situated in the world and the light that the princes have absorbed of the 70 nations will remain there. will not be elevated. We must elevate them by means of our actions, our mitzvahs, and our learning, and that's what brings forth the emergence of the feminine waters and elevates them upward.
Well, it could be that um, the it's just like in a relationship of a male and female. It can be one can initiate and reach out to the other. It can come from either side. It can be that I guess you might say that it's more typical. It's okay. Leave where it was. It's more essential. You might say it's more typical for the man to reach out to initiate, or but it could also be that the woman reaches out and initiates, or makes an advance or something like that. So in the same way, the for us too, the relationship to build a connection, and I'm not talking about a long-term connection. I'm talking about on a day-to-day basis, on an hour-to-hour basis. It can either begin from the people or it can begin from Hashem. So if you suddenly you wake up in the morning and you say, you know what, yesterday was a wasted day. I gotta really make today better, and you make sure to to study extra Torah or to call someone that you haven't called, and someone that, let's say, your neighbor. So then the initiative is coming from the person from below. That's called feminine waters, and the it's like the woman who is reaching out to start the relationship with the man. However, it can also, let me finish, please. It can also be that it starts from Hashem, and this would be if let's say it's Yom Tov, it's a holiday, okay, and it's the holiday that inspires the person to go do an extra mitzvah. Let's say um, let's say the person has a child, or their son or daughter has a child, and it's a special occasion. So these are things that come to us, in a sense, we say they come to us from God. The holiday, Shabbos, or a special occasion in your family. And then, if this motivates the person to to um, to strengthen the relationship, then that would be called masculine waters, because it was like the advance, or the come on, came from an external factor, which we could attribute to God. Holiday, Shabbos, a new baby, a wedding. So this you could say is initiated by God, and then that would be compared to masculine waters. Then the person can respond and continue the
And the
relationship.
Jewish people are considered feminine to Hashem, masculine in many ways.
Yes.
So when the Jewish people, not just male or female, but when a Jewish person does the mitzvah or prays, they are raising the feminine waters, doing it for themselves, and that's the feminine. The feminine waters brings both the male and the female as Jewish people when we do those acts.
They both. The question is, where does this initiate? Where does it start?
Correct.
And that's the question.
I understand. Do the
Yes.
commandments. We do this. We initiate the process.
And we also talk about that what one does is brings a response from the other. So if the Jewish people initiate, then there's a response from Hashem.
Correct.
Hashem responds, and it strengthens the relationship. If Hashem initiates, we respond,
Right.
and we have the choice to respond or not. Hopefully we respond, and it continues to build a relationship. If our response is short-lived, and you have a holiday, and you say, no, it's very special, I got the message of the holiday, so and then Sunday morning or the next morning, it's over, then you had a very temporary response, and the relationship doesn't continue, it doesn't go anywhere. But if you have something and the person and there's and it lasts, then that so to speak strengthens the relationship. That is exactly what we spoke about last week. It is connecting the Yud Hey with the Vav Hey. Exactly what we spoke about. It's building this relationship. It's strengthening the connection between Zah and Malchus, or between Hashem and the Jewish people. Okay, I want to hear if Nancy is waiting to ask, and Gershon's waiting for a comment.
No. It's saying that the holy that pray or do it, that's initiated from
It may be.
above.
Like if it's the holiday that gets you going,
Creation, spark.
yes, exactly. In fact, the Hebrew word, the Aramaic word that we use for this here, we're using the Kabbalistic word of masculine waters, feminine waters. We in Hasidus we commonly call it Yisusa de Leila, Yisusa de Lasata. Give you $1 if you can repeat that. Isarusa de la Ela and Isusa de la Sata, which means the inspiration from above or the inspiration from below. Okay, Nancy, what's your question?
So when the holidays are, what is the inspiration from above?
What is if a person if a person is inspired because of the holiday? If the holiday is meaningful to you.
Time and space.
So it's not something.
You see that, when we see a lot of people that they do nothing, and like they say Russia succeeds, the other one suffers. Okay, so what's the explanation to this? Because, like we discussed, we have to initiate stuff like that, and people say, okay, lots of people are not religious, they're doing nothing, they're more successful, so
I didn't hear what were the words that you used?
Russia.
Russia or
Russia prosper, Sadiq suffer, something like this.
yeah, so okay, so what's the question? So if there's a holiday and it doesn't make a difference for the person, is that your question?
Right, the person
My
doesn't do
question
anything
is that, it's about the feminine water that they can initiate that without prayer and mitzvah. Okay, and we see a lot of people that, we think or they do mitzvah, we see them, they're not that successful, materialistic, I'm talking about. Spiritually, they do very high. But a lot of people, they're bad, they succeed in life without doing any prayer, any mitzvah. So,
we have free will.
their success, where is it initiated from? They don't do prayers, no mitzvah, nothing.
That's a whole nother concept of where the success comes from. Yes. Okay? From here we're talking about building a relationship and between Hashem and the Jewish people, which in turn causes a strong divine flow, what they call here divine beneficence. That's what we're talking about right now.
Extricates these souls. That's the key. We're extricating the exiled souls and the princes.
Yeah.
That's what's going on.
Okay. Okay, Alan, I'll continue. Bottom of 923.
A similar thing is accomplished when righteous people die. For every single righteous person must enter purgatory, Gehenna, which is the abode of evil, as is known. He does not enter it in order to be punished, for on the contrary, when he enters purgatory, he is cooled off for his sake, so that it doesn't affect him. Rather, the reason he must enter purgatory is in order to gather souls held captive by the forces of evil present there and elevate them together with him. They enter the higher realms as feminine waters and are rectified by the masculine waters, and then they can enter this world in corporal bodies like the rest of the Jewish souls. Feminine and masculine waters are the Kabbalistic terms for initiative taken by created beings and the divine response to it, respectively.
Okay, Jim, you want to continue? 924.
Thus the righteous, both in life and death, ex- extricate souls that have gone into exile among the nations. This is the mystical meaning of the verse. There is a time in which man rules man to his detriment. That is, that the man of evil rules the man of holiness, that is, the souls. All of the souls of holiness constitute a complete body of holiness, termed the man of holiness. Same applies to the forces of evil. This is the detriment of the man of evil. The rule of evil over the Jewish people during their exile is to evil's detriment, as though as through this the holy souls are redeemed from within it. Thus their rule over them eventually harms them.
In your own words?
So so the so um, the in exile there is a rule of evil over the Jewish soul, over the Jews, but the Jewish soul has the capacity to redeem, um, uh, not. I don't know if it has to be righteous. It has to be mitzvahs and study. I think the righteous piece, which I was really getting into, which was really elevating. It looks like the righteous goes into purgatory and and helps elevate souls that then transmigrate back into a corporate reality. Yeah, corporal reality. Looks like that's one piece. And then in that's one piece. And then it also looks like in exile, uh, the Jewish soul can extricate uh, the evil that's in the place of exile and the evil that rules over the Jewish soul in that exile. It looks like that.
So, I understood it says that the. Go ahead.
No. That the evil rules the righteous soul, but the righteous soul is able
Overcome
to extricate or
Rule of
redeem or.
evil over the Jewish people during exile is to evil's detriment, as though the holy souls are redeemed within it. Thus, their rule over them eventually harms them.
So
That
what
means
I
evil.
understand is that the holy souls are able to redeem
Yes.
evil souls. But if the evil soul is dominant for whatever reason, then it stays where it is and doesn't be redeemed.
I think that's what it's saying to some
But
extent.
it says it doesn't.
if
This is to the detriment of the man of evil, for the rule of evil over Jewish people during their exiles is to evil's detriment, as though this is through this holy soul are redeemed from within it. Thus, their rule over them eventually harms them. Their rule being evil's rule.
You're saying that. That means that when the Jewish people go into exile,
They redeem,
and let's say a place like Iraq,
right?
and they harass and persecute the Jewish people,
Yeah.
the Jewish people are there to take out the sparks
Take out the
of
pride
holiness,
of holiness that are in those prisons.
and so they're having control, dominion over the Jewish people there, and the Jewish people, meanwhile, are um, extricrating, or I'm going to say, sucking the life, sucking the holiness out of these places,
Correct.
and then the evil is left with no sparks of holiness, and I guess collapses on itself.
Which is this Jewish souls were brought to Egypt. There was this idea too in Zohar that they're brought to Egypt to extricate some of the soul, the light that was trapped there, and bring that forth. No, not the mixed people. When the Jews,
Was was for the sparks of holiness.
right?
That was Moshe's idea. But I think an example of this is, I don't know if I mentioned it last. I just mentioned
there was so much evil in Egypt, but there were Jews were brought there. I read to extricate, to bring out some of that light that was sitting there in the spark.
I think I mentioned this in the last few days. I don't think it was at this class, um, but I read a book that was, I think, published in the 30s, 1930s, not 2030s, and they point out there that when the non-Jewish author, that the Jews were kicked out of Spain in 1492, and Spain has not recovered. This is what recently, but at that time, that Spain never. I mean, in a practical sense, they kicked out the people who manage or who do business with money, and 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 they said this over 400 years later. They wrote that Spain never recovered, and what it's recovered now is nothing of what it was. Um, but in this sense, we can say that the Jews left, and then that the Jews left, took out all the holy sparks that they needed, and then it was just left with evil. The book was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Yeah, thank you. I think Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. He writes that. It was just, it's one of the classics. Okay.
So if you
Great.
ask, what do they care? Know that evil is a dead thing and possesses no life force on its own whatsoever. This is why the feminine aspect of evil is called death, the male aspect the shadow of death, as taught in the Zohar. Moreover, the wicked are considered dead even while alive, for their holy soul, derived from the living God, had departed from them due to their sins.
Um, what's the shadow of death? Gam kielech begeit some of us. Yeah, yea, even though I walk through the valley of death, the shadow of death,
I
and
won't fear
I shall feel no
evil.
and it is also mentioned in several other places. This some of us the shadow of death. I think also later in Tillim, and wicked are considered dead even while alive is based on the verse Lo hamesim yalu kav lo kol yardei duma, that from the Hallel that the dead do not praise God, and it says like duh. This refers to the wicked who even in their life are called dead. Right, that was it. They took it from the Tillim. Okay.
Which is all around this, but that's a whole different. It is known that the soul descends into the body versus the sphere of Yesod, which is called living God, Keochai. But when they sin, a soul of evil called death, or the shadow of death, enters them, and that is why they are called dead even while alive.
We've had this before, Susan. Yitzchak, this idea of live, living, refers to Yesod. Okay, 925.
Therefore, the only desire of evil and the evil inclination is to pursue men, entice them to sin for their benefit, for they grabbed hold of the holy soul called life, and they derive sustenance from it, and through it they live. The souls held captive by evil function exactly like a soul inside a body, enlivening it. Therefore, all the forces of evil pursue holiness. They cling to anything that possesses any holiness. For it is known that whatever clings to holiness clings to life, and whatever separates itself from holiness separates itself from
The word is cling. We had that in the parsha last week. Vatem hadvekim b'Hashem Elokechem chayim yuchamim, that you cling. Same word that he uses here, davek. That you cling to Hashem your God. You are all here living. You're all today living. So the idea of living and davek and clinging is in the same pasuk. A. B. I explained talking to somebody about the holiness of marriage, and we know, especially from here, that that marriage corresponds to the joining of male and female of Zerampin and Nukva, which sends divine energy or divine beneficence into the world. So it's the holiest of the holy, called in God creates and man procreates, because we're copying God. And it's especially in this area where Klippa puts in so much effort and has such a strong, tight grip on the relationship of male and female. And here is the especially is the greatest klipa. Think of everything that people are bombarded with on TV, movies, commercials, um, and so on, all in the media, the news. You go to the news, and then you have to know what this one's doing, what that one's doing. It's like, I'm here to see what's going on, in the world. Not here, and not in the entertainment part of the news. I want the other part.
There's no entertainment part of it.
So what I'm referring to, Alan, is a lot of times on the story, they'll have a little, in tiny letters, it'll say, this is world, this is politics, this is entertainment. I don't know if you see that.
No, never saw that.
Okay, so they have a little thing on the internet, what Shadowbox. No. Shadowbox something in marketing, Rudy?
No.
What do you call that line on top of the letter? It's not called the Shadowbox? Okay, that's how I got confused. Anyways, so on the internet, they have that when you go on the news, it'll tell you where it's from. That's what I'm saying. What area it's from. So you're bombarded with this. This is the greatest holiness. This is where we get to do what God does. We create greatest holiness, and and this is where we're just bombarded, and it's all around with the greatest klipa as well.
life. Right. We got to rectify it.
But says that evil wouldn't have any power.
Yeah, but we still.
Well, they get their power from the holy sparks.
I understand that, but
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't know what it would be, but maybe it wouldn't be dominant. It wouldn't have power.
I think it still could feed off of things. With the world the way it is, so close to each other, it could feed. There's feeding. I think that I don't think it's spatially situated in the way uh, it used to be. I think that it's become more of a microcosm process, smaller. But still say that we're here to, to extricate, elevate and extricate. And I think this is what this is talking about a little bit as well.
think
Right,
I think
right.
I'm trying
And
to
I
think
think
of
that's part of the plan.
is
I
that
agree.
that
It's
maybe 70-80% correlation of areas with larger amounts of Jews. Those are more prominent areas in the world, and areas where there are very small concentrations of Jews or almost no Jews. The those places are not. There's nothing going on there. Nothing important going on. No discoveries with and not 100% correlation, but maybe a 70-80% correlation.
but I'm gonna one more line. We're gonna get there.
Right.
He's right here. It had to be right here. The next thing. Just let me do it. Let me just do two more things. Let me just two more.
Remember after Z,
Oh,
remember, no, when the Cat in the Hat took his hat off, there was thing A and thing one and thing two. So we can't forget about them.
let me bring it around.
Second of all, I did point out in our class a few weeks ago that the Shalav wrote that exactly that there was a good that came about because this way the Jews were scattered all over and able to do the Sparks.
Right.
So we said that in
Right.
Shalav 3 weeks ago.
Right. But it would as an output from there. Here, it's going to be it.
Okay,
With
Jim.
this, you can understand why a wicked person is punished when he sins, and how much he deserves to be punished, and that he defies holiness and profanes it, enlivens evil, and kills the forces of holiness by causing it to enter death. Aha! Next. With this, you can also understand how Adam, through his sin, caused all the exiles of the Jewish people. The Jewish people will have suffered until the Messiah comes. Boom! There you go. I just try to get to the next line. I know, but I'm just pointing it out. It's right there. I mean, but it's right there. Right. Okay. So now he goes to another question. Now we must address the question. Why do we speak only of four exiles, Babylonia, Media, Greece, and Rome, while in fact the Jewish people were exiled amongst the 70 nations, as it is known? Okay. We must also explain why the entire Jewish people were subjected only to these four exiles, while not all of them were exiled to the other countries, but rather, as long as even one of them was exiled there, it was considered as if they had all been exiled there as before. Yeah.
Gershon,
Well,
926.
the
835.
explanation is that in the realm of holiness, there are four letters in the name Havaya, which are the source from which the 70 Havaya are manifest, as well as the 72 other divine names, which are branches from these roots. These four letters are the four rivers in the Garden of Eden, as it's known.
Mentioned in the Torah.
Similarly, in the realm of evil, there are four rivers, known by the same names. Gihon, Gihon,
Gichon.
Gihon, really? Um, Western
Rivers.
Spain.
Yeah.
The Tigris and the Euphrates.
Tigris.
Tigris
Tigris.
and
Euphrates.
Right.
That's how
Where
you
I
say
come
it in
from.
Spanish.
That's right. Which are the rules for dividing the 70 nations? As our sages say, the name of the first was Pishon. This refers to the Babylonian Empire. The name of the second was Gikon. This refers to the Median Empire.
This is from Medrash. When the Torah says, the Torah gives the names of the four rivers that um, that what? That branched out from the Garden of Eden. Okay?
All 70 nations are included with these four rivers. Therefore, the entire Jewish people were exiled to each of these four archetypal nations: Babylonia, Media, Greece, and Rome. The other 70 nations are just particulars and branches of these. Each of these lesser nations took only one type of soul, and therefore the entire Jewish people does not need to be exiled to these nations. Only those individuals, the sparks of whose souls fell into that nation, need to be exiled there. Let's repeat that. Only those individuals, the sparks of whose souls fell into that nation, need to be exiled there. Rescue those sparks, in order to extricate their sparks that fell there. With all this, you can understand the significance of the Egyptian exile, which preceded all others inasmuch as it's alluded to the first river, the highest of them. We're told that the river issued from Eden to water the garden. From there it split and became four riverheads. The name of the first was Pishon. That's from Bereshit. Thus, there was a general river in which the four rivers were branches. Four rivers signify the four archetypal exiles, and the preceding general river signifies the separate archetypal exile of each.
Did we say before that these four rivers are holiness and they have counterparts
Yes.
in Klippa?
Yeah, that's what it says.
That's what it said?
It's saying that. It's saying that these are the four letters of the four rivers of Garden of Eden, which is the divine names, and in the realm of evil there are four rivers. So it's talking
Known by the same names.
same name,
It says,
Pishon,
known by the same
Gihon,
names. So we have,
Tigris, and
the
Euphrates.
Torah speaking about it is speaking about holiness.
Yeah.
But then we have the same thing counterparted
Evil.
in evil.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. The third paragraph from the top. Since all 70 nations are included within these four rivers, I don't understand how a nation can be included in the rivers. Is it like a marshal? A bit like a.
Yes, Micah Mashal.
Okay.
The rivers.
So it wasn't literally the people that they're somewhere in the river and they go.
The rivers refer to the flow of holiness from God. And they also refer to the flow of evil. So it's a metaphor. It's a metaphor.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's a metaphor for the evil and for the 70 nations.
Oh, it's a metaphor.
Okay.
The divine presence first descends and is clothed inside the form of evil known as the head, and then descends and enters level after level until the lowest level, the feet. Then it reaches the feet, the verse. When it reaches the verse, and his feet will stand on that day on the Mount of Olives. That's from Zechariah. Okay. Will be fulfilled and is explained in the Zohar.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
This verse describes the future messianic Christian.
I'm going to guess that is the Haftorah for maybe Toldos or something. Referring to, no, I know. It sounds like a Haftorah from some time.
Therefore, the entire Jewish people were exiled into Egypt and Babylonia, for Egypt was the head relative to the other exiles, and Babylonia is also called a head, as it is written, "You are the head of gold." The Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar had a dream vision of a strange statue. Daniel interpreted various parts of the statue as referring to the various empires that would rule the world.
The head of gold, the torso of silver, Um, arms, the extremities were, I think, uh, copper or bronze, and then the feet of clay, if I remember correctly.
But the 10 northern tribes did not go into exiles of Greece and Rome, for Sennacherib, the king of Assyria, had already exiled them, as is known. And Greece and Rome are not included in the head, which includes all Jewish souls. Rather, the sparks from the remaining 2.5 tribes were scattered and mingled into these nations when they were exiled to them. All the more does this apply to the other nations that are only branches and derivatives of the main four. Whoever needs to whoever needs to be whoever needs to is exiled there by himself. This explains everything. In fact, the Assyrians deported the 10 tribes of the northern kingdom, Israel, before the Babylonians ascended to power and conquered and exiled the southern kingdom, Judah.
About 100 years before.
So it would appear that the entire Jewish people participated only in the Egyptian exile, while only the Judean remnant were subject to the subsequent exiles, including the Babylonian exile. True, as Rabbi Chaim Yosef David Azulai points out, the prophet Jeremiah brought some members of the 10 exiled tribes back to Judah. These refugees intermingle with the southern tribes, and therefore they are members of all the tribes among us to this day. It may therefore be said that at least representatives of the whole Jewish nation did undergo all the exiles. Then, this applied to all 4 exiles, not just the Babylonians. He therefore proposes that the Arizal only stated that the entire Jewish people underwent the Egyptian exile, and the 4 subsequent archetypal exiles were experienced by only the southern tribes, with representatives from the other 10. Relative to each other, the Babylonian exile was the head of these 4, but it was not a head in the same overarching sense that the Egyptian exile was a head. That was so everybody was.
And this is why the next paragraph, which is what I was talking about earlier.
One moment.
Well,
One moment.
Yep. That should be about who was
This is why Egypt was big.
yeah.
We're all there.
We're all there. We all needed to be there because there was so much to be extricated. And he says it's still there, which I agree with, but there's so much.
All in the story. That's the sparks or
So why? I'm not. I didn't follow this.
well, who was where? So in Egypt we were all there.
What's the point he's trying to say here?
Who was where?
Okay.
Babylonia, there were 2.5 class members of the other. Is that correct?
Two
Talking about
tribes.
Two tribes plus
Well,
representatives.
really going to be talking about Egypt, and he's talking about Egypt as the head. That's where it is. That's
Sure.
where it's really focused. And then he goes on little divergence to say, the other exiles, we didn't have all the tribes. Then he says there were some intermingled Jews who came back, et cetera, et
But
cetera. But he's really talking about the head. That's what he's
but Egypt.
Egypt. This
But
is
the
really
others wasn't.
That.
okay. But wait. But he's the focus of this is Egypt. This is what
Yeah,
he's getting
because
head. He's going to tell us why in the next piece. So
we can now explain the Egyptian exile. Why it is mentioned more than the others. This is because all the sparks of the collective head of the Jewish people were present in Egypt, and the people were not removed from Egypt until they had extricated all the sparks from within it. This is the meaning of the verse, and they emptied out Egypt.
that's what you.
That's it says it when the people borrowed.
Yeah. As I said, they left it like a net with no fish, meaning Jews who are like fish, as it verse, and they will multiply like fish. Or, as the sage said, they left it like a silo with no grain. Also meaning Jews who are likened to grain, as it is written, Israel is holy to Hashem, the first of his produce. and those who devour my people like those who eat bread.
That's why Egypt is so evil.
Is
Because
what?
it is so evil because there was so many sparks that were taken out of light. What was left,
Pure evil.
a lot was pure evil. I'm just pointing it out. And so Egypt festers in that pure evil. Just throwing out a and,
Worshipping.
well, it's always been death worshiping, but this is it's
We,
just
we find a number of references, as he mentions here, the idea of Egypt, of just squeezing it dry, of emptying it out, and the idea of uh, of extracting all the sparks. Right? That was the idea of, we did it through the physical labor there. The Torah says that the Egyptians embittered their lives with hard work, all the work in the field, with uh, mortar, and bricks. So in that through that difficult labor, harsh labor, was how we took out the sparks. In addition to that, the tribe of Levi was involved in Torah study at the time, and also through their Torah study, they were able to take out the sparks.
Rabbi, when it says spark, is a literal, I mean, it's not martial, it's the sparks of holiness. The actual sparks were there, were elevated.
Yes, sparks of holiness.
Right. Okay. Okay.
Okay, you want to do a little more?
In contrast, even three redemptions from the Babylonian, Median, and Greek exiles were not entirely redeemed. Some aspects of the Jewish soul remained there, not having been extricated entirely. Um, I'm just saying because here it says Jewish souls. It doesn't say like sparks of holiness or any more abstract. It's particular Jewish souls. Anyhow, just
Yeah, this is exactly like, okay, so here it falls over there was spark.
yeah. So we left some Jews behind, I guess.
Yes, read.
Accordingly, some of the Jews remained under the rule of Babylonia and Media and did not return to the land of Israel to build the second temple as is known, in order to redeem the sparks that remained there. So we have
42,360 Jews, if I remember correctly, left, went with Ezra to go back to Israel. What? It was 10%? It was 42,360, and were given many of their names, not the name of each person, but the name of every family, every clan, and it's repeated a number of times.
that's Iraq,
Yes.
Nonetheless, people ask for big return from these exiles, and therefore his returns are termed redemptions. They were not as complete as was the redemption. This is also the reason why the prohibition of "you shall not see them again" is so strong.
When it came to Egypt, we're at the sea, the Red Sea.
Oh,
So God says you're never gonna see them again like this.
Forbidden for Jews to be based on this verse and others. But since all the souls have already been extricated from this evil, from Egypt, whoever returns there and thereby submits himself to that evil profanes holiness and divine presence for no reason, subjugates it to the power of evil.
Wait, what?
Did we have people after this? How were they living?
Maimonides ended up there. It's not like he actually chose it. He was running away. His life was in danger several times. He was given safe. And he himself writes in his letter, the Rambam himself, Maimonides, writes that he signs his letters as who is violating 3 prohibitions every day of living in Egypt. So there are also you're allowed to go there, like you're allowed to go there temporarily. Once you're there, if you end up staying, it's a little different. It's not like, hey, let's move to Egypt.
And it's an Airbnb.
there is after. Hold on a second.
No lead.
By the first destruction, the prophets wanted King Tzidkiah to negotiate with Nebuchadnezzar and sue for peace.
Yeah, but there was an alliance with Egypt.
And they insisted on aligning with Egypt. This is mentioned over and over in the prophets. Mentioned over and over. Egypt is going to save them. They're going to turn to Egypt. They have an alliance. Egypt's going to save them. This is talked about over and over. After the destruction, there were some Jews left, and we know that that Gedaliah ben Achikam was the governor, and then Yishmael ben, I think, Kachia assassinated him, and the Jews were certain that Nebuchadnezzar would come back and kill them for the fact that Gedaliah was assassinated. Like, hold them responsible. And they asked Yirmiyah what to do. Yirmiyah says, I don't want to answer you because only if you listen. No, they promised they're going to listen to Hashem. They wanted to go to Egypt. They felt they'd be safe there. And he said, okay, well, Hashem says not to go. And they said, well, you're just saying that you don't want us to go. He said, well, if you go to Egypt, you're going to be wiped out over there. They went to Egypt. So they looked to Egypt as their savior. Okay, we're going to pause. We're going to stop here for the week. Next week, I'm planning not to be here Tuesday night. Okay, Nancy?
Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
One of those.
Thank you so much. Be well.
All right. Good night.
What's his name's? Benayim was making a wedding in New Jersey. I just got back. 7 o'clock. It was great. I got some pictures for you. I only sent you one or two. A few things I didn't want to say in front of on all this, but in LA, you drive around LA, the place is movies. There are billboards all over the streets. Billboards advertising the new movies that are coming out, new movies or TV shows, and a lot of them are klipa, like not good stuff.
A lot.
Yeah, a lot, most. But there's billboards everywhere you go. There's billboards of the movies that are coming out. And you don't see that here.
Correct. So that we kind of now
Could be.
Go up and don't move it down.
So what I was told is that Talia is very highly respected there. People think very highly of her, and people have a lot of respect for her. It's not my friend was telling me who's older, obviously. Here, Rudy. You can what's to call through the pictures? Yeah. For my wife? Oh, for rolls. Did you say bring them to the office? No, bring them to me.
Right now, thank you.
Hold on. Okay. I'll give it. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah. So it worked out. I just went to say hi. I had my friend didn't expect. So it worked out. Yes, right now. And wedding. Region face. Yes. Always. I stay there. Every birthday party. One constantly in there. They have a ring at 40 there. Every time I use the living room at night. So London
not a situation.
York, I'm very, very nice.
Good.
Okay.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good.
Good. I saved it in my head.
Very good. For you.
I really just, I really,
Thanks a lot. Thank you. Welcome back.
You're welcome back. You drove from Toronto? Oh. Oh, I'll see my car now. Driving me crazy. Oh. My boat. Parking. It's not park. So I go 3 times, 4 times, like 10 minutes to go.